Welcome to the Great Energetic Pivot. Wood Snake Wisdom to Fire Horse Momentum. So this episode is becoming an annual tradition for us. It's one of my favorite topics to talk about because it's a holiday that I've celebrated my entire life as a Taiwanese American, and that is Lunar New Year. Though I will say, the Mandarin translation of the holiday is Chunjie, which literally means spring festival. And it signifies basically the coming of spring, warmer weather, a new lunar solar start of a new year of the animal zodiac. And the Chinese animal zodiac includes 12 different animals. And in the order of the way that they won the race in the folktale is rat, ox, tiger, rabbit, dragon, snake, horse, goat, which I am in the year of the goat, monkey, rooster, dog, and pig. And there's a lot of culture and folklore embedded within the animals. And I wanted to share one aspect that was kind of fun and makes sense. So in the Chinese zodiac, there is no cat. And the story goes, the rat tricked the cat into oversleeping and missing the start of the race for the animals of the zodiac. And henceforth, cats detest rats and mice. And so the cat is actually not in the Chinese zodiac because it overslept.
I love that. Love that.
So Lunar New Year, this most recent start of the Fire Horse, was on February 17th, and it lasts for 15 days, ending on a full moon, and it ends on the Lantern Festival. And so we are moving from the 2025 year of the Wood Snake to 2026, the year of the Fire Horse.
Thanks for joining us today at the Healing Medicine Podcast. Who are you listening to? I am Dr. Jessie Mahoney, and my co-host is Dr. Ni-Cheng Liang. We are two board-certified physicians who bring decades of experience to the conversation about wellness. If you crave more ease and aspire to rediscover your love for medicine and life, one mindful step at a time, you are in the right place. We hope you'll love today's episode, and if so, please share it. A reminder that nothing in our podcast is medical advice. Today, we're going to talk about that powerful transition from the year of the wood snake into the year of the fire horse. And this is not a subtle shift. It's not gentle. It's this massive energetic shift that we are entering into.
So the wood snake invited us to slow down, to reflect, and to transform internally, shedding what did not serve. But the fire horse is something completely different. It's about movement, courage, stepping forward in ways we may have been preparing for quietly in the year of the wood snake.
So today we're going to reflect on what we have learned from the wood snake and how we can step into fire horse energy with intention rather than being overwhelmed by its energy. But before we do, I want to ask you, Ni-Cheng, to explain a little bit about the elements, because I was having a conversation about Chinese New Year with someone yesterday, and they said, what is this element thing? And they didn't know what it meant. They know that the years and the animals and what that means, but I have learned about it through you. And I'm totally into it. And I'm going to just tell you, I am an earth rooster, which I just love that. And my husband's a metal dog. We actually did a bunch of research as I was talking about the fire horse in this episode. And when you dig into it, it's fascinating how accurate it is about the energy you bring and your personalities. I'm floored.
So there are different elements attached with every year. And actually, you probably have actually done more research than I have about the elements. But So not only are the animals attached to different personalities, like if you were born in the year of the sheep, for instance, like me, then you're supposed to have certain characteristics. Whether or not that's true remains to be seen, but I think it's pretty accurate. That being said, there can be some grand generalizations as well.
Of course, of course.
And then with the elements attached to every year adds like another um, depth of characteristic to that particular year. And the particular element will have basically the characteristics embedding that year. So, like the fire horse is hot and literally fiery and a lot more movement, and yeah, there's like adjectives from that particular element that kind of imbue the year and the animal.
I think of it as like the tone and energy or the flavor or the approach. And so of that year in tarot cards, apparently there's something called a clarifying card. So it makes me think it's like the clarifying energy of that year. And I think it's interesting also because while I can't remember how many elements there are, but there's, as you said, 12 animals, but that combination, there must be five because only the combination only comes up every 60 years. I do know that. So I'm thinking from that perspective that it's this also way to sort of match things in a different way where we enter there's a lot more difference between all the different choices. If it's only once every 60 years that you get a certain combination.
So there are five elements, and the elements are, as we've already mentioned, three. So wood, because we're exiting the year of the wood snake. There's the fire horse that we're entering, and you just mentioned metal. So that's a third one. And then there's earth and water.
Yeah. I'm the earth rooster. I'm leaning into being an earth rooster for fun since I did this research a couple days ago. At any rate, so tell us a little bit more about the year of the wood snake, which we're coming out of. And then we'll talk about where we're heading.
So the snake energy is wise, it's observant, it doesn't rush. Snakes shed their skin, and especially in this transition, it's such a powerful metaphor for our own internal and even external transformation.
And it makes me think, if you're thinking in the sort of transformation, I talk about this not Lunar New Year, but calendar New Year around like ending well and beginning well. And then that pause in between, which is the transition. And that's really what we're going to be talking about. So this ending a year of where you potentially felt like you were outgrowing old versions of yourself. Maybe things slowed down a bit, which for many of us high achievers, slowing down is unusual. Or maybe we're ending the year a little bit frustrated that things didn't move as fast as we wanted, or there's something that we wanted to do that we haven't done yet.
So the wood element adds growth, like growing like a tree, healing, flexibility, like thinking about branches that bend in the wind. Growth doesn't always look necessarily like fiery and dramatic. Sometimes it's quite slow and it happens quietly. So was there a moment this past year of the wood snake, Jessie, that you realized you were changing?
Well, I spent the whole year changing, actually. I was just thinking about this idea of outgrowing a version of yourself, which I would say, if I look back from this Lunar New Year to last Lunar New Year, there are so many things that I feel like I have outgrown. And a lot of it was around, if I think about my intention words for the year, all of this seems like a way to frame our life experience and a way to filter it. So that this idea of sort of being beyond a lot of the imposter syndrome and beyond old habits that held me back and belonging wherever and being willing to sparkle like that, those were all specific invitations to outgrow some of my old patterns. And so when I look at myself now, a year later, I'm much more grounded and more clear. And I think that I have really shifted my energy and the way that I see my role in my family, and both my family of origin, and then I'll say my literal created family, either chosen as a spouse or the humans that we created. I feel like I'm in a very different space. So it was really interesting because I had not thought about it through this lens of this wood snake until we started thinking about this episode and what had happened. And it's a really cool way to look back at the last year and think, well, how did you show up in it and what transpired, even in my case, without me knowing about it?
Yeah, I think just pausing here and reflecting, obviously, like not everyone is going to quote unquote believe in the Lunar New Year, animals and the elements, etc. But as you said, it is an invitation to a fun framework of introspection and reflection. And so we're inviting everyone to partake in that. And by the way, 1.5 billion people in the world celebrate Lunar New Year, much of it in the Asian diaspora. So, so this is an episode that I take great joy in sharing because it is my culture. And like, I'm literally in the midst of celebrating Lunar New Year with my family.
What I think is so cool about this episode, I'm going to interrupt you just because before we move on, is this idea that even if it's not your culture, that we can learn so much from other people's culture. And because of my relationship with you, and this annual episode, I have learned so much, and it's just given me yet another moment to pause. But when you're looking at it through the lens of a different culture, and we often talk about, right, the culture of medicine, this is just a different cultural framework. When you look through a different lens, you see the same thing completely differently.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's really a beautiful opportunity. And I think one of the reasons that like travel is so amazing, right? Because we show up seeing things in a different lens and from a different standpoint. It allows us to reflect on our own lives differently. And so, again, no matter what you celebrate, I think there's value in just having fun with it and exploring it as a creative endeavor.
Thank you for saying that. For me, the wood snake energy has been one of much more introspection, whether it be voluntarily or involuntarily heeding my own internal cues. I've been encountering stress much more physiologically, partly because I think time-wise, where my biological age versus my surgical menopause are kind of like meeting. But stress is really showing up in my body pretty differently these days, and it's pretty loud. And so I've really needed, by necessity, to stay attuned to my body and literal shifts in tension. So to be vulnerable here and share about my physical ailments right now, like my TMJ joint, the one on my left side particularly is really active. Like I have active osteoarthritis there right now. My migraine frequency has dramatically increased. I now have chronic migraines. So in addition to the grounding into honoring time for my usual self-care activities and maybe even like adding on to that, I've also sought out medical attention for those ailments.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that's come up very often this podcast recently is the somatic version of how these things show up. So not just in our head and what we think about them, but moving slow enough to notice what's actually happening. And we were all trained to not notice what was happening within us. We're trained to notice everything that's happening outside of us, but not within us. And it's really sort of a dialing down the volume of the outside influence to notice what's happening inside. And I want to point out that part of this may be coming from the fact that you have slowed down so much for you since I met you. You slowed down a ton. So of course you're aware of these things that you may have been going on within you that you weren't even aware of. You were just sort of shutting them out and shutting them down.
Yeah. And there has been this gratitude for my mindfulness practice to enable me to have the time and space to even notice and to like seek out help. There's also been more patience with myself, and along with it, some self-compassion. A lot of inner work this past year, and then letting go. So all of that introspection was kind of this like inner churning and noticing, becoming much more aware, not just of my physiological changes and physical responses to stress, but also my mental state, and being quite particular, and also noticing what's annoying to me and what's not annoying to me, what irritates me, what I need to do for setting boundaries, and not being afraid to set those boundaries, letting go of what doesn't serve. So, like that shedding, the molting of the snake skin, um, letting go of other people's energy that doesn't serve, other people's thoughts, and also, as I had shared in our other New Year episode, about letting go, like of material things that no longer serve.
I think for me, it was very much a year of letting go, I would say, of my own stories about things, ones that aren't serving me. I wish I could think of a more creative way to say that. And also stories, noticing the stories that I had that I was using that weren't mine, that came from parents or other people in my life, and how I was living my life based on stories that things that I thought were just the way things were, but they were really just versions of interpretations from other people in my life. And I think it's not that we don't want to keep those, they can be a really helpful guide. But as an adult, we want to pause and think about, well, which of our parents' stories are actually our stories? And they might also guide you, for example, early in parenting. Maybe you want to borrow some of those since you don't have another framework of doing it. You've never done it before. But as we get older and older, I think leaning into what is ours and belongs to us, and what are we carrying that belongs to other people. And for me, this past year, I think I was successful in shedding them. I would say that I noticed a lot of them before, but I hadn't necessarily let them go. And so I really love this idea of leaving things behind in the year behind you. And I would say it's interesting because I left a lot of things behind. And again, until you started talking about the molting snake, I was like, oh, wait a minute, that explains it. So again, it's a framework of reflecting that. And I think when we reflect with a certain perspective or a certain lens, we can gain so much wisdom. So we want to talk a little bit about the transition. And I think that pausing for that transition is really critical. Many of us in life move from room to room without the pause in clinic, or phase to phase, or from home to work and work to home. And so this idea of paying attention to the actual transition, ending something well, transitioning well, and then beginning well. And what I mean by well is with intention and healthily for you and maybe those around you, but mostly healthily for you, allowing yourself to do it on purpose and thoughtfully. And when a snake sheds, it pauses. Imagine that. And so this idea of pausing and not immediately rushing forward. I think so many of us are in a hurry. We have an urgency bias in medicine and we immediately rush forward. But there's that important pause, and so much of the wisdom comes in the pause. I think it's the value of things like sabbaticals, it's the value of things like vacation, so many things that we enjoy, but we don't really notice the reality of it. And so allowing pauses in each of your day as a transition, allowing a pause. It's interesting. Culturally, we are allowed a pause between med school and residency, though not necessarily too much, and a pause between residency or fellowship and whatever else you do, then it's an acceptable pause. But how can we give ourselves time to shed our old identity and step into a new one?
So the pause is so sacred, and it's so important, Jessie, that you put the word pause in your company name.
I know, I love it. I have to say, I have a flag at Nicasio Creek Farm that says, it's giant, and it says pause on it. And that's to tell you, like, you're here, but it's also just because I love the word pause, right? Like, how different is life when you give yourself time to pause?
So we also need to honor that pause in giving ourselves permission to have the time to integrate who we are becoming. And it can take time. So let's talk a little bit more about the molting process of the snake. And Ara, my little one, actually reminded me of this physiologic, very natural behavior that snakes will exhibit from her classroom snake pet. So her classroom corn snake pet, she reported to me, rubbed its body against a wood plank in there to help the skin shed. So what a beautiful congruence of like literally the wood snake being right next to each other, the wood helping the snake shed what no longer serves, and the snake seeking help externally to allow it to transform too.
I love that. And getting help helps, right? Even for snakes. And sometimes it's actively choosing something. Sometimes it's just rubbing yourself up against something. I actually get a lot of help by rubbing myself up against things, not physically, but, I get help from noticing what doesn't work for me and resisting that. And so rather than seeing it as a negative, I now always see it as a positive. I'm going to envision myself as a snake rubbing against wood now. That will make me smile. So our invitation here at this moment is to ask yourself, what did you shed last year in the wood of lunar year of the wood snake? And or what are you leaving behind in this wood snake year?
I'm going to also pause here and say that that is a beautiful journal entry. So if you want to like pause and like grab your journal or something, or like come back to that question to take some time to write things down, like there's an open invitation for you right there. So now we are in the midst of the year of the fire horse. So the horse, the animal, the horse, not surprisingly, conveys movement, freedom, action. Doesn't really wait.
It's a much louder energy, horse energy, than snake, thinking of those, horse hooves and the noises that they make. And it's much more visible.
And as you were saying that, I envision like a horse galloping with its like mane and tail hairs like flowing in the wind, and how much more space a horse also takes up than a snake. And then we're going to imbue that energy with fire. And when you add fire, everything intensifies. There's passion and courage and creativity.
And warmth, I would add. Fire adds heat and warmth. So I think some of it seems like it's a bit scary to me when I think first fire, but all of the attributes you just mentioned are not scary at all. Passion, courage, creativity, warmth. And so if you can think about the snake was preparation, and then the horse is activation, or what's coming next. So we're going to talk a bit about a comparison of the 2 years. And I'm curious what you think, Ni Chang, is the biggest emotional difference that people might feel.
I think that there could be an internal sense of urgency, of like a forward shift in momentum. There might be less hesitation, and hopefully along with that there can be some more clarity because of the wisdom and because of the pause that was garnered from the year of the wood snake, having been just recently more thoughtful and taking that wisdom forward with your momentum. So Jesse, do you think some people might feel uncomfortable with this faster energy?
Absolutely. It's interesting because I'm someone who loves faster energy, but I often notice like that's what I've always loved, and we're gonna talk a little bit about being uncomfortable next. But it's not actually resonate for a lot of people. They want to take their time. They want to be more cautious. They want to be thoughtful, and the horse energy is not that. What's interesting is while I'm comfortable with faster energy, and being sort of decisive and taking action, I don't like horses actually. And this has played into, I know you're laughing,
Why
played
do you
into
not like
my thoughts
horses?
about the horse year. And this came up. So uh, I will share it in a future episode. I actually just finally finished my Martha Beck coach certification. And in my last session with my mentor, I had fulfilled all the requirements. And so it was basically a free session, but we had to have it as part of the things you have to do. And so I was able to get coached for the whole session. And my mentor is actually an expert in metaphor coaching. And so in this metaphor, you go through this visualization, it's whatever comes to mind. And there was a horse in my visualization, first of all, which is funny. And so I told her the story I'm going to tell you. And by the way, this metaphor visualization was so helpful. It was super cool. And again, it's sort of like suspending our overactive mind and just letting things come in. But when I was a child, I was about 8, I had a really bad experience on a horse, and that's why I don't like
Oh,
horses.
I see. Okay.
So I had my family was in Arizona and we rented horses, and my horse got stung by something and took off with me on it. In the cowboy movies, I was like hanging on to the side. So it was really terrifying.
Yeah.
And this went on for quite a while. Finally, it paused at some point. And I was able to kind of let go and just fall to the ground so I wasn't thrown off. And
Uh-huh.
it could have turned out terribly. So I have this fear of horses. On the other hand, and I've only been on a horse once since then, a few years ago, because I thought it would be a good idea. And it was fine, but I'm just like, you know what? I don't need that. Really interesting because now I live in the middle of horse country. There's horses everywhere. And I do like looking at them and I like listening to them, but I don't want to ride a horse, if that makes sense. So I'm very sensitive to sort of that visualization of the mane flying and all that crazy energy. And I know that horses have that energy. And yet there are also these very peaceful horses that come right up to the edge of the gate right by my house now, and they want an apple and they have these like beautiful eyes. And I am very aware that a lot of people do horse therapy.
Mhm.
And so what comes to mind here is that a horse can be multiple things.
Mhm.
And horses actually have both of those energies. And they, for many people, are so beloved. Most 8 and 10-year-old girls love horses, right? And so I think just to think that, like, while the horse has these characteristics, it also has others. And so to me, it's that duality that's allowed there because I love the faster energy and the quick decision making and the less hesitation. I don't love the urgency energy, but the sort of taking action and moving forward feels good to me. Being stagnant doesn't. And shedding feels good once it's shed, but the shedding process does not excite me either. So I think it's sort of interesting. So I think that for many people, the change is destabilizing. And I would say for many people in healthcare in particular, change is destabilizing. In fact, we fear change because we like to have certainty. And so this horse year is full of powerful horse energy change that for many people, I think might feel a little bit destabilizing. And so our invitation next up is how do you navigate that? How do we move through it with intention and grace and elegance and use the faster, beautiful horse energy in a way that is helpful to us?
Thank you for sharing that story. I had no idea that happened. And of course, you would be carrying that trauma from childhood and therefore not like horses. So thank you for sharing that. And I'm glad that now you get to live next door to some horses and perhaps change your relationship
Yeah.
with horses.
Yeah. So we have this opportunity of the fire horse year. And interestingly, I am actually seeing, and this only came up through this other coaching session and this sort of idea of Chinese New Year, that it is kind of an opportunity to change your relationship with something that might have been traumatizing or might be a thing in your life. and that it is just an opportunity to act on things that you've been thinking about. And I might offer that to me, it almost feels like permission. So even if you don't believe in all of these lunar calendars and zodiac things and energy of different animals, when we enter a year like this and there's a lot of conversation about that energy, it might just be the opportunity to set an intention around taking action or embracing change or changing your relationship with something. And so there's a lot of excitement and permission energy floating around, enthusiasm for change, which we often don't talk about culturally and in our society.
This is an opportunity to be courageous, inviting yourself to not hide anymore, to be visible, to put yourself out there. And that definitely requires some transitioning, both physically and mentally, perhaps. And then also there's an inherent trusting of yourself when you put yourself out there too.
And a reminder from our recent episode that there's also an inherent trusting in the world, because there will always be, when you put yourself out there, people who don't like what you put out, and there'll be people who do. And so a trusting that you'll be safe enough in the world if you do that, and that you can handle, that's the trusting yourself, whatever comes up. But remembering that we were somewhat trained not to trust ourselves. We were trained to be hypervigilant and hide. And be careful, very careful about vulnerability in our medical training. And so let this maybe be an invitation to think about, what have you been waiting for, which was the topic of one of our recent episodes. What have you been waiting to start, and why not now?
So with fire, we have to be cautious, metaphorically, and also like literally in real life, of course, because fire can also burn. So with that ignition of energy and warmth and heat, it can also, when taken to extremes, become harmful. This type of energy can also lead to a certain type of impulsiveness and even recklessness. So as with everything, there needs to be some tempering with our own inner wisdom.
And awareness is what comes to mind. Awareness, and also remembering who you were and bringing the wisdom of the past. I hear so often from people that, like, oh, it's like a staying or a leaving in medicine. And and so the same correlation here is like, we bring what we were before to what we're going towards. And so can we bring the wisdom of, whether it's the year of the snake, or I can't remember what year was before that, but the wisdom that we've acquired can come forth with us. It isn't like you let go of snake energy and you're all horse energy. So allowing yourself the balance and the transition. And as you move forward into something, and maybe you take a risk, or maybe you take action, you stop waiting, being intentional about setting yourself up for success. What are the guardrails that you need? What is the support that you need? I don't think the year of the fire horse is an invitation to just dump off the diving board into an icy cold lake. Like, what else? How can you support yourself well, so that whatever you move towards turns out in a way that feels comfortable and safe and healthy for you?
So we'll offer up some invitations on embodying fire horse energy and let it serve you.
Potentially choose to release what is no longer in alignment for you.
Trust your instincts. You have your own inner wisdom, perhaps cultivated through the recent year of the wood snake, that you've already cultivated through your own truths and lived experiences.
Lean into courage and say yes if an opportunity calls to you.
Take action, even if it feels scary. So here's an invitation to call to action for all of you, dear listener, is to join Jesse and me for our Connect in Nature retreat. It is a stabilizing activity pretty much in the middle of the fire horse year, this summer to pause and reset and reflect. And there's so many different other adjectives and verbs that I could insert here. But yes, this is a call to action to join us for Connected Nature.
And to not wait to do so. I think oftentimes people decide that they want to come at the last minute, and a lot of the local hotels are full because this is a popular place to be. It's so beautiful. And so making it happen takes taking action now. So maybe utilizing that momentum of the fire horse to stop waiting. And considering in your life, where is your life asking you to move? What is calling to you? Where is that nudge or that inner push that you feel that where do you want to head? What's exciting? What's interesting? What do you want? What's calling?
So the wood snake helped us transform, shedding our old skin. The fire horse asks us to live that transformation. Now you can run if you want to.
You are ready. Thank you so much for joining us today for this fun Lunar New Year celebration episode. We hope that you enjoyed it. And I do see it as an episode that is helpful in any year, honestly, because there's so many pearls here about transitioning and so many pearls here about choosing your energy and permission and how to handle things that might come up that are unexpected.
So I will close with the Mandarin greeting of Happy New Year. 新年快乐. We hope this episode helps you move into this new Lunar New Year of the Fire Horse with clarity and courage.
And we will see you next time. We also hope that we will see you in person this summer at Green Gulch and Muir Woods. What an amazing thing to do in the year of the fire horse. And I want to just give ourselves a little kudos that the decision to offer this again, just like we just decided to do it and jumped in like fire horses. And so we hope that you will too, because it's going to be super fun. And I am really looking forward to it. So I hope that more of you will join us. It's actually already half full and we're still 5 months away, almost 6 months away. But we would love to have some of our listeners join us. We know you're out there listening and we get your messages and emails and comments, but we are people, and we would love to meet you and share some time amidst the trees with all of you. So we'll put the link in the show notes so you can sign up to join us that way. And we would love it if you leave us some Lunar New Year congratulations and comments and stars of celebration. And we'll see you next week.
Thanks for listening. If our message resonates, we'd love to connect further. Join us for coaching, mindfulness experiences, workshops, and retreats. Invite us to speak at your institution or conference. When you work with us, you don't just consume information, you create real change. Find me, Chang Liang, at Awakened Breath and Jessie Mahoney at Pause and Presence. Welcome to this mindful moment offering. If it's safe for you to do so, inviting you to close your eyes or lower your gaze a few inches in front of you, inviting you to join me in a reflection practice. First, we'll notice the support of the ground beneath you, whether you are sitting or standing or walking as you happen to be listening. Next, inviting you to notice what has already been shed. You have already dropped something or let go of something this past year that no longer serves. What is that? What have those things been that no longer serve? And checking in to notice how you feel now, acknowledging that letting go, that shedding. And next, embracing and allowing in the energy of a horse, the strength in the muscles as it gallops, or the empathy and wisdom that it brings when it pauses and mindfully eats an apple. And imbuing that energy with some fire, some passion and courage, a sense of wanting to do something, perhaps. What is it that is calling for you to do? What is calling for you to help you become the next best version of yourself in this fire horse year? And inviting that sense of possibility, curiosity in as we enter into this new year. And as you're ready, coming back to noticing the support of the ground beneath you, because no matter how you embody that fire horse energy, you'll need the ground to help support you unconditionally along the way. And as you're ready, blinking open eyes, letting the light back in, taking a moment to notice how you feel now compared to a few minutes ago. Thanks so much for practicing with me.